We are rolling.
Good morning. Welcome back to the conversation. This is Pointing Out the Obvious. This is our news and politics webcast, our daily take on what's buzzing today. I'm your host, Patrick Russell, and over there is my very opinionated producer, Veronica. Together, we're here to quip and quiver through today's headlines, searching for the real, no matter how deep into the swamp we need to go. Happy and complicated Monday to you, Veronica. We're here to remember on our webcast the very successful and very popular and will go down in history as one of the seminal characters in the Gulf War II and the George W. Bush administration, Mr. Colin L. Powell. And he was the first officer to be elected to the chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff. Mm-hmm. That ain't no small thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he was also the first black Secretary of State for the United States. Also, not a small thing. That ain't nothing. And so I'd like to celebrate what I believe is a historic career, and not only for him personally, but also what he's done probably for all of the black Americans, especially those trying to rise in the ranks of the military and in the Pentagon, and then also in the upper echelons of government, such as the Secretary of State. And so from that standpoint, we need to give credit where credit is due. Yeah. A true patriot, a great man, and he did a lot of rights. And I'm not saying that he's not. But that doesn't detract from the wrongs, and especially the major wrong that he perpetuated against the American people while he was Secretary of State. Going along with the myth that Iraq had any WMDs, that's weapons of mass destruction, not one piece of nuclear technology, material, or weapon was ever found in any part of Iraq. Now, can you imagine that? Veronica, let's just take a moment here and grasp at the best military and intelligence community in the world, in associations with other militaries and intelligence agencies around the world. Yeah. Got it all wrong? I mean, got it completely wrong? Not even a partial program, not even one of these mobile trailers. He had this picture of an RV that they were pretending that they believed were mobile Iraq nuclear weapon sites that were on wheels. Can you imagine? And that's where Colin Powell lent his credibility and put his good name on the line to lie to the American public about what he thought was true. Why do we know he lied? Because he said it later on that he expressed regret ever being part of that charade. And he also, even at the time, refused to go in front of the world nations unless the director of the CIA, Tenet, was sitting right behind him. It was his demand, not a request, a demand. You want me to go in front of the cameras and go in front of the world and say this bullshit? Tenet, you guys stay behind me. And he did. But he knew, if my reputation's on the line, and if this goes down south, I want everybody to know everybody was on board. Yeah. Oh, because it was a whole big sham from George Bush to Dick Cheney to Rumsfeld to Colin Powell. They were all in on this meta. When I say meta, this is world-changing economic maneuver of trying to change the Middle East into a pro-democratic region to help with energy prices and all of that. We get that. Now, some would say, Pat, what are you barking up the wrong tree for? Look what happened. We won the war. We secured major contracts in Iraq. For better or for worse, Iraq is a little bit nicer to us, and we do have a little bit more control of the energy pipelines in the region than before. Looks like it worked out for me. Worked out for us, right? Yeah. Not true. The story hasn't been written yet. The next major war, especially if it's in the region, what's the likelihood that the historians will trace back to the forensics, to the crossroads of time, and that the George W. Bush administration and Colin Powell's lap and his performance in front of the UN wasn't a cornerstone to what led us down this vicious track? So the story isn't written on just what the consequences of Colin Powell selling out to the powers that be and lying to the American public. We don't know what the consequences of that are. The jury is still out on that. Judgment's still out. However, I do have this question. It's a broad one. From a younger generation's perspective, Veronica, how do you feel about any situation where a leader feels compelled to lie to his people? Let's talk about an American leader being compelled to lie to the American public. Do you agree with that in any situation?
No, I definitely don't agree with that. But just to kind of go on the story, it's I do appreciate, obviously, that back in 2001 he was, assigned as the first African American. That's a huge thing, right?
From a family of Jamaicans.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a wonderful American rags to riches stories that he's told in his own book. He's an author. I mean, this man is a very successful, accomplished man. I'm not trying to detract from his wins.
And this is why it's very important to know that once we put someone into power, we expect a lot more than just lies, right?
Integrity.
Yeah. So I don't agree with what he did, and I hope nothing wrong comes out of that, which, it will be hard to know unless, until something happens, and then, like you said, they're gonna cross over the, what he did, what he didn't do, and then we probably gonna be in the middle of that.
It's a historical significance argument that I'm posing, one that I believe the jury hasn't come through yet.
Yeah.
I think the test of time still needs to be passed in order for us to get through any potential conflicts that I believe are currently brewing in that region, right? And so what would have happened? Alternate history if Colin Powell refused to bring his good name into the fray and to try to convince the world that, yes, Iraq was a danger to its neighbors, dangers to the world. What if he came out and said, you know what? No. There's a different diplomatic way that I believe that we should go about this, Secretary of State. Shouldn't be the first thing you claim to be the first method of resolution is to grab the gun and take somebody down, Secretary of State. Yeah. It should have been for you to stand your ground and say diplomacy would have been the better way. Now imagine that alternate universe. What would that mean? Any blood shed in Iraq? Not happening. Any people that we betrayed along the way. We see it all the time now with Afghanistan, but we did it in Iraq too. The interpreters, the contractors, those neighbors that decided to put their faith in us, and then we left, and then their neighbors that they were trying to police and to try to help the United States overcome their resiliency, and they got slaughtered. Right? Well, all of that would have changed. And I think the dynamic of our relationship with the current governments in that region would be different. That's an inarguable point to make. If Colin Powell stopped the Iraq war, our world would be different. That's an inarguable point, right? And I'm saying that the jury's still out of what would be a better path, what we did versus what we could have done. Last point?
No, they're pretty clear.
Guys, there's no right answer, there's no wrong answer, but there's definitely your opinion. Please don't just subscribe to the show, even though we will be doing this back and forth. But please, lend your voice to this show. It's going to make it a whole lot more fun. Guys, it doesn't matter if you lean to the right. It doesn't matter if you lean to the left. As long as you're treating the person in front of you kindly, you just made the world a better place. Happy Monday, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.